annual function is Shri Chowna, Honorable Deputy Chief Minister, Government of Arunachal Pradesh, requesting him to grace the dais. The valedictory session of this 63rd annual conference is being chaired by Professor Dhananjay Singh. He is Member Secretary, Indian Council of Social Science Research. Request him to please grace the dais. The valedictory address in this session is being delivered by Professor Kunal. He is Director, United Nations University, World Institute for Development Economics Research, UNU-WIDER, Helsinki, Finland. Grace the dais, sir. I now request Dr. N.T. Rikam, he is Registrar, Rajiv Gandhi University, to commence the proceedings of this valedictory session with his welcome and opening remarks.
Honorable Deputy Chief Minister of Arunachal Pradesh, Shri Chowna Ji, Professor Kunal Sen, Director, United Nations University, World Institute for Development Economics Research, Professor Dhananjay Singh, Member Secretary, ICSSR, Professor Saket Kushwaha, Honorable Vice Chancellor of Rajiv Gandhi University in absentia, Professor S.K. Naik, Vice Chancellor in charge, RGU, Professor Deepak Nair, President ISLE, Professor Alak N. Sharma, Director IHD, Professor Jimol Uni, President 63rd ISL Conference, Professor A.C. Awasthi, Honorary Secretary ISLE, Professor Bandana Upadhyaya, Conference Organizing Secretary and Coordinator of this Center, Department of Economics, Rajiv Gandhi University. At the very outset, I extend my warm welcome to Honorable Deputy Chief Minister Shri Chowna, who is gracing the valedictory session of the 63rd Conference of ISLE as Chief Guest. Sir, your presence has definitely added value to this conference, as we are delighted to have you today and to listen your wisdom and guidance. I welcome Professor Kunal Sen, Director, United Nations University, World Institute of Development Economics Research, Helsinki, Finland, Professor Dhananjay Singh, Member Secretary, Indian Council of Social Science Research, all the who's and who's of ISLE on the dais as well as off the dais. Ladies and gentlemen, present in this August House, I also extend my warm welcome to the District Magistrate, Deputy Commissioner of this district, Shri Sachin Ranaji, SP, Sub-Divisional Officer Daimu, my learned deans, heads of departments, and esteemed delegates from different parts of the country as well as abroad. Rajiv Gandhi University feel it a privilege to host the 63rd Conference of the Indian Society of Labour Economics, culminating today. Esteemed delegates, Arunachal Pradesh is a land of dawn-lit mountain which housed 26 major tribes and more than 100 small and sub-tribes, spreading over 83,000 square kilometers, which is the largest landmass amongst the northeastern states of the country. Arunachal Pradesh epitomized the popular notion of unity in diversity, as we have numerous ethnic groups having own distinct cultural heritage, custom, tradition, language and living pattern. Apart from indigenous tribal communities, we have people from different parts of the country engaging mainly in business and service sectors in an environment of peace, tranquility and brotherhood. The traditional economy of the people was based on zoom or shifting cultivation, but slowly it has become redundant. In its place, case-based crops, both in horticulture as well as agriculture, are now practiced by the people. The state has vast hydro potentials which could transform the state economy and become a giving state instead of begging state. I believe holding of this conference on labor economics has opened up the potentials of the state, particularly in the tourism sector, forest resources and hydropower. The state has huge biodiversity hotspots. If properly harnessed, could change the people's imagination and will have great dividend for the state. Rajiv Gandhi University is a lone public university initially run by the state government. It was converted to the central university in 2007. Although university is under the ambit of central government, the state government has been helping and supporting this university in various ways in terms of funding in research and infrastructure development. Recently, we have completed a major research project on unsung heroes of Arunachal Pradesh under the active support and guidance of Honorable Deputy Chief Minister Shri Chowna Research on state culture policy and state sports policy are also going on in the university. Infrastructure-wise, state government has funded a huge project on water supply and treatment plant amounting to more than 20 crores, which is at the verge of completion. It will help the university in resolving the water crisis, which has been a perennial problem since the beginning of the university. Then we have a student activity center, View Gallery and Rostoms, which state government has supported us, and also government has funded us for establishment of Buddhist study center in this university. Even for organizing this conference, the state government has helped us financially as well as logistically, including hassle-free issuance of PEP, ILP, etc. I must thank the state government for such gesture and hope that the same spirit will continue in the days to come. I extend my thankfulness to the ISLE for refusing faith on the Rajiv Gandhi University to host this 63rd conference here in the campus. But at the same time, I admit that there might have been certain shortcomings in our hospitality and other arrangement. I request everyone, especially the outside delegates, to carry good memories and left behind all the experiences here itself. I once again extend my warm welcome to Honorable Deputy Chief Minister, the chief guest of today's valedictory session, and all the dignitaries, and of course, all of you on this penultimate session of the 63rd Economic Conference here in Rajiv Gandhi University. Thank you very much. Thank you.
He's supported us throughout the preparations of this ISLE conference. We are also very thankful to you. I now invite Professor I.C. Awasthi. He's a professor at the Institute for Human Development, New Delhi, and the Honorary Secretary of the Indian Society of Labour Economics to give his welcome and opening remarks.
Honorable Deputy Chief Minister Shri Chowna, Govt of Arunachal Pradesh, Professor Deepak Nair, President, Indian Society of Labour Economics, Professor Jimoluni, Conference President, Professor Saket Kushwaha, Vice Chancellor, Rajiv Gandhi University, Professor Kunal Sen, Director, UN-WIDER, Dr. Dhananjay Singh, Member Secretary, Indian Council of Social Science Research, Professor Alagan Sharma, Director, Institute for Human Development and former President, ISLE, Dr. N.T. Rikam, Registrar, Rajiv Gandhi University, and Professor Vandana Upadhyay, Coordinator, Center for Developed Studies, Department of Economics, Rajiv Gandhi University, and Honorary Secretary, 63rd Annual Conference of Indian Society of Economics, and the distinguished scholars and delegates present here. On behalf of the Indian Society of Labour Economics, I extend a very warm welcome to all of you coming from different parts of the country and from abroad. We profusely thank you for your contribution and making this conference a special one. The deliberation the last 2.5 days has been both productive and useful. Hosting conference at the RGU will always remain one of the most cherished and memorable events for all of us. With this, I thank you all for your participation and contribution. Thank you.
Accord formal welcome to our chief guest, Shri Chowna. I request Professor Sushant Nayak, the VC-elect, the VC present at the moment, to kindly come on the dais and felicitate the chief guest, Shri Chowna. Requesting Shri Nayak. I know we've had some busy sessions, but we have to show our energy. This is what ISLE is all about. Thank you so much, sir, for taking time out and joining us. We are very thankful to Professor Nayak for felicitating the chief guest of the valedictory session. The sapling and the conference bag. Requesting Professor Nayak to please grace the dais. Please grace the dignitaries on the dais, Professor Nayak. I would now invite Dr. N.T. Rikam to felicitate Professor Kunal Sen. Of course, we need more energy in the hall. Louder round of applause, please. Thank you very much. And now I would request the organizing secretary of the conference, Professor Vandana Upadhyay, to please felicitate the chairperson of the valedictory session, Professor Dhananjay Singh. He's member secretary, Indian Council of Social Science Research. Thank you, Professor Upadhyay. I would now invite the President of the 63rd Labour Economics Conference of the Indian Society of Labour Economics, Professor Jimoluni. She is Professor, Economic and Public Policy, Ahmedabad University, to present the overview of conference deliberations.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for all being here. Esteemed Deputy Chief Minister, the Vice Chancellor who was here at the inaugural, the Registrar and all the dignitaries on the dais. I'll speak about the highlights of this wonderful conference that we have had, the 63rd Labour Conference of the Indian Society of Labour Economics. This conference year, we had more than 260 papers presented of very high quality across 3 themes. And the 3 themes were youth employment, rural development and diversification, and the impact of COVID in the long run. The keynote papers for these 3 themes were presented by 3 distinguished scholars. Shri Verick of the ILO presented on the challenges of youth employment, and stressed on the importance of countries developing an integrated youth employment strategy. Vinod Abraham, professor at the Center for Development Studies, Trivandrum, presented on the rural non-farm sector and the importance of diversification, focusing on the trends and patterns in employment in the rural economy. Professor Ashwini Deshpande of Ashoka University discussed the impact of COVID-19 on the Indian labor market and stressed that the employment channel for India is bigger than that of achieving levels above what we had before the pandemic. We have had in this conference 4 memorial lectures. 2 of eminent professors who left us this year. Professor Abhijit Sen Memorial Lecture was presented by Shri Ramesh Chand of the Niti Aayog. He spoke on the changes in the female labor force and employment evidence from the Indian data. The T.S. Papola Memorial Lecture was presented by Professor Rajat Katuria of the Shivnadar University on technology and the future of work. The V.V. Memorial Lecture was presented by Dr. Martha Chen of Harvard University on the informal economy in comparative perspective. Professor Y.K. Alag, who left us very recently, the Y.K. Alag Memorial Lecture was presented by Professor Indira Hirve of the Center for Development Alternatives on work and workers in India, moving towards inclusive and sustainable development. In this conference, we have had a number of panels, 6 panels, and 2 roundtable discussions, which covered a broad range of topics, such as the impact of COVID on the labor market in the Global South, which was an international panel talking about what happens after COVID in the countries of Brazil, South Africa, Bangladesh, and India. There was a panel on migration, and there were various aspects of gender were discussed, such as livelihoods and employment, across themes such as women entrepreneurship in MSMEs and women's movement and care work. We had a special plenary session focused on climate change, since that is a very, very important issue facing all countries in the world. Climate change, livelihoods and employment, which stress the consequences of this on our social and economic systems and the options available to reduce the adverse impacts and increase capacity to respond. We had an international panel of speakers on this plenary. Every year we hold a symposium which focuses on the region that we have done our conference in. So this year we had a special panel dedicated to the region in which this conference is organized, that is the Northeast. And this year the panel was on creating decent livelihoods and employment opportunities in the hill economies of Northeast India. Several experts exclusive to the region discussed this issue, and it's hoped that these deliberations connect to various tracks of the dialogue and serve as a policy inputs for the governments of this region. Now to talk about the next conference, the 64th conference of the Indian Society of Labour Economics will be held at the Central University, Hyderabad. We have received an invitation from the Vice Chancellor of the Central University, Hyderabad. And the broad themes that have been decided upon by our executive committee and also by the approved by the the general body meeting of the ISLE is the platform economy and employment. The second broad theme is employment growth broadly for sustainable development and other issues. And the third is care work and the economy and various issues within that. It is my pleasure to thank all the various people and organizations which have been associated with this conference and have helped us to make this a really grand success. The Rajiv Gandhi University, Vice Chancellor of the University, Registrar of the University, the Department of Economics at the University, the head and Vandana Upadhyaya, Professor Vandana Upadhyaya particularly, and her team of very enthusiastic students. Students of the entire university seem to have been volunteers here. We had like 148 students volunteering here. And yes, a special applause to them. We also had a wonderful cultural performance by the students of the economics department of this university, which really set a standard for economics students in other universities as well. I'd like to thank the team of the Indian Society of Labour Economics and the Institute of Human Development, where this is, which hosts us every year in some sense. Priyanka Tyagi, Jyoti Girish, Bhim Reddy, Sarthi Acharya, and all the rest of the team members who I cannot name now. It's a very, very large team. Even at 8 in the night, I've seen video clippings or video tracks of this entire team working in the IHD office trying to put all this together, like even 3 days before the conference. And finally, my thanks to the president of the conference, Deepak Nayyar, and Alak Sharma ji, without whom the ISLE was not going anywhere. On behalf of all of us, we thank you all for having been here for these 3 days, and I hope you enjoyed the conference, and definitely you enjoyed Arunachal Pradesh. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Oni, for your kind words. And now I invite Professor Deepak Nayyar, Professor Emeritus, Jawaharlal Nehru University, former Vice Chancellor, University of Delhi, and the President of the Indian Society of Labour Economics, the man who leads us from the front, to address the gathering.
Our Chief Guest, Deputy Chief Minister, our guests, Kunal Sen and Dhananjay Singh, our gracious host, the Vice Chancellor Saket Kushwaha, who is not in our midst this afternoon, Registrar, and the Economics Department, Vandana Upadhyay, who has been the organizing secretary for this conference, and Sushant Naik. And last but not least, my team. Professor Alak Sharma, Professor Jimul Uni, and those who are not on the dais, who made this possible. The past 3 days have been rich fare. We have had the presidential address, 3 stimulating keynote addresses on each of our chosen themes, 4 invited lectures, a plenary panel discussion on climate change, and a wide range of planning panel discussions with so many technical sessions. And above all, a sparkling cultural program put up by Rajiv Gandhi University and its students for us. For me, the presence and the enthusiasm of our young participants from across the country has been a source of both joy and pride, for they are our future. The conversations outside the conference rooms have been just as important as those inside. The evenings with debates, gossip, entertainment, and whatever else people chose to do are fun and special. I have always believed that a conference is a success if you meet one old friend and make one new friend. The ISLE conferences do far, far better. In this closing session, I will not repeat what my colleagues have said. I'd like to mention 2 sets of profound ongoing changes in the world. The first is in the sphere of labor and employment, which is the focus of our concerns in society, and an important aspect of debates on development. The second is the most difficult economic and political conjuncture in the wider context, reminiscent, I'm afraid, of the 1930s. The era of markets and globalization during the past 3 decades has changed the world of work beyond recognition. There is an explicit shift from labor to work. It is also possible to discern a change in the nature of work, and there is an implicit shift in emphasis from workers as a class to workers as individuals. The decline and fall of trade unions is part of the same process. Employment, I'm afraid, is no longer what it used to be in the workplace for a lifetime with healthcare and superannuation benefits. It has been casualized as people work on contract for specified purposes and limited durations. These changes in the nature of work mean that livelihoods no longer depend on employment alone. Even work is necessary but not sufficient. What matters is the income it yields. We study and debate these challenges, but there is more to come as robotics, artificial intelligence, 4D printing, or the Internet of Things, juxtaposed with further technological changes on the horizon, would exercise a profound influence on the nature of work, forms of employment, and the well-being of people whose only endowment, hence source of income or livelihoods, is their labor. Over the past 2 years, the implications and consequences of the coronavirus pandemic for the world of work have been transformative, far beyond what we might have thought in 2020, and the process of hysteresis, long-term consequences of short-term effects, might unfold in ways that we have not yet begun to understand. The coronavirus pandemic, we know, prompted repeated and prolonged lockdowns across the world, which meant a serious disruption in integrated global production networks. Just-in-time production systems were paralyzed as intermediates and components made in China or East Asia were no longer available. International trade and investment flows were inevitably stifled, while the cross-border movement of people was strangled. This situation might have improved in early 22, but that was thwarted by the Russia-Ukraine war, which disrupted global supply chains, particularly in food and fuels. The sharp increase in the prices of food and fuels has pushed inflation to double-digit levels everywhere. The response of central banks, driven by orthodoxy, has raised interest rates, which, in my view, would stifle investment and dampen consumption instead of curbing inflation that is caused by supply constraints rather than excess liquidity. In fact, instead of soft landing, the prospect of a recession in the world economy looms large on the horizon. The continuing war in Ukraine has also enhanced uncertainty and risk in the economic and political spheres, making markets nervous, very nervous, inducing large international firms into relocation and reshoring of production to minimize risk. This era of globalization is clearly under stress, I believe, at risk. The problem is accentuated by resurgent nationalisms in both industrialized countries and developing countries, juxtaposed with international tensions created by a discernible shift in the balance of economic power away from the West towards Asia, particularly China. The similarities with the world that we live in and the world in the 1930s, 90 years ago, are striking, and the potential implications, to me, are worrisome. I mention these profound changes not only because we should be concerned with the bigger picture, but also because the ISLE cannot rest on the laurels of the past 6+ decades. It should, of course, continue to address problems of the present, but it must also think about challenges to come in the future so that it is and remains ahead of the curve. I might not be around on its 75th anniversary, 12 years from now, and I will definitely not be there in centenary year, but if we continue to nurture the ISLE as an institution, which we all do as a collective, its conferences will be just as lively and vibrant then as they are now. May I simply say thank you to our hosts. Thank you to everyone present in this auditorium and some who might have left earlier this morning, for you made it possible. And thank you for my wonderful team and colleagues.
Kumar Nayak. He is Professor and Head Department of Economics, Rajiv Gandhi University, and the Vice Chancellor in charge to address the gathering.
President, Indian Society of Labour Economics. Conference President, Indian Society of Labour Economics, 63rd one. Registrar, Rajiv Gandhi University, Dr. Sen. Professor Dhananjay Singh. Member Secretary, Indian Council of Social Science Research, Professor Vandana Upadhyay, the Organizing Secretary. Dignitary invited from nook and corner of India, from Gujarat to Manipur, from Kanyakumari to Kashmir. I'd like to say this is the first time in the history of Arunachal University and Rajiv Gandhi University that such a big congregation of big economists have taken place on Rono Hills, that is Rajiv Gandhi University. So Rajiv Gandhi University is fortunate enough to have you all sirs here. And on behalf of our Vice Chancellor, once again, I thank you for your kind visit to this campus. In fact, yesterday night, our Vice Chancellor called me up and said, Professor Naik, I am handing over you the charge because Professor Panigrai is out of station and now you take care of the valedictory session. So, I am here on behalf of our Vice Chancellor and I am thanking you all on behalf of our Vice Chancellor also. Now, with these few words, whatever the Vice Chancellor has instructed me, with these words, I conclude my speech. Once again, I thank you all on my personal behalf. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Nayak, and we from ISLE are also very thankful to you for spending all your support for organizing this conference. As many of you may be aware in ISLE that every year ISLE presents certificates to young scholars below the age of 40 years for the Best Paper Awards. I invite Professor Alakhind Sharma, who is the editor of IJLE and the head of our ISLE Secretariat, to conduct the presentation of certificates.
One of the main objectives of the Indian Society of Labor Economics is to encourage young researchers in enhancing their research, their interaction, and all that. All of you might have seen that a large number of young researchers come to the conference. The society has instituted 3 awards for young scholars, which are given in the conference. The first award is Surjit Singh Fellowship. Dr. Surjit Singh, a very well-known economist, director of Institute of Development Studies, Jaipur, who was honorary secretary of the society, died prematurely. His family has given an endowment, and this award, with a cash prize of 20,000 rupees and of course a certificate, is awarded to a young scholar below the age of 40 years. The other award, you might be knowing, Professor Rudradat of Delhi University, again, his book on Indian economy is a very popular one. Even after his death, it comes out. So this is another award for best paper. And the third award is, again, Professor Rudradat was also conference president of the society and very active. Professor N.K. Deshpande, who died 2 years back, Professor, very well-known labor economist of the country. In his memory, his family has also given a small endowment, and this award is given. We select the awardee based on inputs from the chairperson, discussants of the respective papers, and then a committee examines that, looks into it, all the papers recommended. This year in the committee, apart from Professor Nair, Professor Jimolvini was there, I was a member of the committee, but by the way, 3 of us did not decide. It was recommended by the various chairpersons and discussants. I am happy to announce the names of 3 awardees. The first one, Surjit Singh Fellowship, has been given to Dr. Paritosh Nath of Azim Premji University, jointly with Dr. Rahul Menon of O.P. Jindal University. Since the announcement of the award is made last day because we get inputs from all the discussants and chair. I understand that they are not present, but I congratulate both of the authors. They have been jointly given. The second award is Rudadar, Employment Opportunities in Education Sector of India on the paper and analysis using PLFS data to Dr. Arunachal of Indian Institute of Management, Ranchi, and Dr. Sakshi Jha, again of IM Ranchi. May I request Honorable Deputy Chief Minister to give the award to Dr. Arunachal and Ms. Sakshi Jha.
Call for a round of applause.
The third award has been given to Mr. Sumit Arora and Mr. Anshu Saluja. They are Are they here?
Join on the dais.
This is L.K. Deshpande Award.
Do deserve a great encouragement, please, Captain.
So congratulations to all the awardees for their achievement. Thank you very much.
Professor Kunal Sen has over 3 decades of experience in academic and applied development economics research. He is the author of 8 books and the editor of 5 volumes on the economics and political economy of development. From 2019, he is the director of UNU-WIDER, and he is a professor of development economics at the Global Development Institute, University of Manchester. Professor Sen is a leading international expert on the political economy of growth and development. He has been awarded the Sanjay Lal Prize in 2006 and the Dudley Sears Prize in 2003 for his publications. Indeed, a privilege, Professor Kunal Sen, to invite you to deliver the valedictory address of the 63rd Annual Conference of Indian Society of Labour Economics.
So, distinguished guests, Honorable Deputy Chief Minister, Professor Jimol Unmi, the conference president of the ISLE conference this year, and Professor Deepak Nair, president of ISLE. It's a real privilege to provide the valedictory address in this conference, because for me, the ISLE itself and the conference has been a source of great pleasure. I've not necessarily come for every conference, but when I've come here, what I've always admired is the openness to intellectual traditions, the approach to different approaches in economics and outside of economics, the fact that we have different methodologies presented in this conference, quantitative, qualitative, and so on, and perhaps most importantly, and something that I think is missing in many other conferences, not only in India but elsewhere, a critical approach to social science, a questioning of social science norms and assumptions, and also perhaps of policies. I think that's exactly what I find very refreshing coming to the ISLE conferences, and I'm really pleased being here that I exactly saw all of that. all of the openness of thoughts, openness of traditions. I saw the different approaches that have been used in so many wonderful papers I listened to, and I also saw this critical approach to social science, which I do think is the hallmark of ISLE as a society and also of this conference. So what I'm going to speak about today is a topic that you've already heard many times now in this conference on informal employment. And there's a reason why we do see this particular topic coming up again and again. So next slide, please. The reason is we are living in a world of pervasive informality that we probably haven't seen before. And it's not necessarily just true in South Asia. It's true in Sub-Saharan Africa. It's true in Latin America. It's true in East Asia, Middle East, North Africa, and perhaps even in the developed world. If you include agriculture, you see staggering less informality, because especially in Sub-Saharan Africa, because you have many workers in agriculture. But even if you take away agriculture, you tend to see also very high informality in manufacturing and services. And so if you even take agriculture out, you have about 51% of the workforce in developed countries employed in informal jobs. That's staggering, and that's quite remarkable. And not only that, it's persistent over time. Next slide. So the question then is, if this is a stylus fact and nobody really can question, the kind of issues I'm going to try and address in the lecture today is really to think about how should we think about informality going forward. In this world where pretty much almost every work you can imagine in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa, and less so perhaps Latin America, are in informal jobs. So how should we think about informality going forward? And what I'm going to try and do is really give you two main points in my lecture, just to make it straightforward. I'm going to argue that we need to see informal work as multi-tiered and multi-layered. Because we see pervasive informality, there's no point thinking about a world where there's formal jobs for a large number. That's not going to happen in the foreseeable future, perhaps for decades. So if the world is really a world of informal work, how should we think of informal work? And how should we categorize it? How should we conceptualize it? And how should we usually analyze it across continents? And the second point I'm going to make is that we need to target policy. So once we assume that we have a multi-tiered labor market, informal labor market, we have to also start thinking of policies that are targeted at different segments and different tiers and different layers of the labor market. One size does not fit all, and I'm going to argue that country contexts matter, historical experiences matter, and therefore we need to think about policies that work in a specific country context that might not work in a different country context. So that's the 2 points I'm going to try and make. Next slide. So I'm going to draw from a book that is going to come out this month. The book is called Job Ladder, Transforming Informal Work and Livelihoods. It's with Oxford University Press. We have a series with OUP going back many years now, which is a UNU-WIDER series in economics. And the book will be open access. It can be downloaded for free. So hopefully it should be out in a few months. So there's a few flyers going around on the book. Hopefully you can see exactly when the book will be out. So I'm going to speak a little bit about what we're getting from the book itself. Next slide. So I think the thing that we need to understand the first thing we need to understand is there is remarkable heterogeneity in formal work. Informal economic activity takes many different forms, plays different roles. In low and middle income countries, it's often a place of resident employment for impoverished, marginalized and vulnerable workers. That's a fact. But can also act as a staging ground for household enterprises in the initial stage of growth. And perhaps they might become formal, perhaps not. That's a secondary question. But it is also true that the informal economy can provide this kind of space, dynamism, entrepreneurship that we often see as household enterprises start growing over time. So we need to keep these two things in mind. So what are the kind of heterogeneity we are talking about? So first type of heterogeneity is to do with the kind of work that workers do in the informal labor market. Informal workers could be multiracially deprived individuals in subsistence activities, agriculture, but also manufacturing services at the lower end. Household enterprises and casual wage workers are examples of that. We can call this kind of informal work or informal workers lower tier informal work. There's no normative assumption in lower tier. It's just used to differentiate between different kinds of informal work in the labor market. So we can call them lower tier informal work. At the same time, we can also have, as I said earlier, informal workers who could be entrepreneurs with potential to enter the formal economy, which are essentially non-household enterprises, growing over time, employers potentially making the leap to the formal sector. And also, we also have workers, for example, in India, contract workers are a good example, with de facto benefits, but without legal protection and social protection that we tend to associate with jobs in the formal sector. And we can call this kind of work in upper tier informal work and enterprises. So that's one type of heterogeneity. The second type of heterogeneity, often ignored in mainstream economics, is the difference between wage employment and self-employment, each with different working conditions and compensation mechanisms. So if we use these two types of heterogeneities, what can we get? And how can we analyze labor markets in Africa, Asia, Latin America, and other relevant regions using this way of thinking about informal labor markets? So let me give some pictures that I've taken and others from elsewhere. So this is self-employment, upper tier and lower tier. On the right, I think of yours, sorry, that's your left, you can see enterprise that I interviewed, Rajiv, who's in this audience here, many years back in Tharwar. This is handlooms, they're making handlooms here. There's not a household enterprise, they already have non-household workers working there. It's not very big, it's what we might call NDME in the Indian context, probably 2 or 3 wage workers, but it's no longer a household enterprise. It's upper tier, self-employed. And this lady I interviewed last month in Nairobi, in a slum called Mathare in Kenya, and she was, obviously, as you can see, selling fruits by herself. A one-person enterprise. And here we have an example of a lower tier self-employed. Moving forward, next slide. And then we can think of wage employment in the same way, upper tier and lower tier. The picture here on your left is of a contract worker and a plumber. So a contract worker, being a contract worker, gets de facto benefits, and of course, needs certain kind of skills. No one just cannot be a plumber without some skills. On the other side, of course, this is a very common picture we know of the Indian landscape, construction workers. Many construction workers working tirelessly in many cities in India. So again, the example of the contract worker, the plumber, is upper tier wage employment. And the example of the construction worker, in India and elsewhere, is an example of lower tier wage employment. So hopefully these pictures can give you some sense of, but it also abstracts from the complexities and thinking about how to categorize jobs and work. And of course, I'm essentially at this point not talking about that, and that's something we do in the book itself. So if you think again in this way, and think of this world where we have a kind of a job ladder or not, because of course a ladder sometimes implies you're moving up the ladder, which is not the case in many contexts. We can think about a situation where we have informal, upper tier, self-employed, wage employed, lower tier, self-employed, wage employed, formal, self-employed, wage employed. And then if you think about transitions between these different categories, next slide, we can think that most of the time we're thinking about how do we move the workers in the informal economy or the informal sector or informal jobs to the formal sector, the formal jobs. That's obviously the preoccupation that we have in many of our thinking about informal work. That's important, there's no doubt about that. If you enter formal jobs, secure employment contracts, social protection, legal protection, you really get all of that. But we know that's a rarity in today's world, in Africa, Asia in particular. So in that case, not only do we should also think about the movements back into informality that has happened during the pandemic, as we know in India, but also if you think about, next slide, we need to think about movements up and down the upper tier, lower tier. Next slide. Sorry, I haven't come, yeah, okay, we can move on a little bit. So you can see that these are the transitions that is really of a crucial importance because moving up makes a big difference in a world where we have mostly informal work. So moving from low to upper tier makes a big difference, whether it's self-employment, whether it's wage employment, and also the other thing that's important to keep in mind, that you have transitions not only upper tier, lower tier, upper tier, and moving to formal jobs, but also have transition going on between a worker who was one day a casual wage worker and decides to starts on his or her own enterprise. As an example, the fruit vendor I met in Nairobi last month. So that's also important to keep in mind. Next slide. This transition between categories, not up and down, but horizontal movements is also very important. Now, that leads me to the next slide. So the kind of questions you should be asking when you start thinking of the world in this way. Can we move forward? Oh sorry. Yeah. Right. So, no, slide back. Apologies. Right. Questions. Who moves up or down, and why? So that's the first question. How frequent are the transitions? Do they really happen in a person's lifetime or not? how transformative are this transition? Do they make a difference or not? Do they really matter or not? These are the kind of questions we should be asking when we look at informality in the global south. Moving forward. So in the book that we have, these are the kind of questions we pose in the different case studies. Next slide. We have different case studies here. We have about 8 countries in Latin America and Central America. So that's and 6 in Africa, 3 in Middle East, North Africa, and 3 in Asia, including India. All 20 case studies use panel data because what we're interested in understanding is the movement of workers from one job to another job or not. So these are the jobs that they're moving to or not moving is very important for us to study, and that's why we're using panel data, at least of 2 rounds and often much longer than that. Next slide. So this is the question that we have, let's for India, as an example of what we've been doing in the book for different countries. So in India, in each segment of the job ladder, how many workers are there? So in India, 60% of workers are in lower tier work. Either it's lower tier informal self-employment or it's lower tier informal wage employment. Now, if you think about India, to compare India to Latin America, there's one big difference. In Latin America, there are many workers in upper tier jobs, whether it's self-employment or wage employment and formal jobs. So there's one striking difference in Latin America and also South Africa. If you compare India to Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, there's one very important commonality and one very important difference. The commonality is, in Sub-Saharan Africa, many workers are also in lower tier informal jobs. That's the commonality. The difference is, far fewer workers in Sub-Saharan Africa are in informal, lower tier, wage employed jobs. Most of them are in informal, lower tier, self-employed jobs. Now, why is India peculiar in this way? Because there are 2 groups of workers we know very well. I already showed you a picture of one group already. Construction workers, and of course, in rural areas, agricultural wage workers. In fact, agricultural wage workers in Africa is a very small group. So right away, India is somewhat different from both what we see in Latin America, but also what we see in Sub-Saharan Africa. Next slide. So the question then is that, okay, so we know where workers are. What happens over time? Where do they move or not? And the answer to this is that it really depends on which kind of work you do. If you are in the formal self-employment, it's quite likely today you're formally self-employed, tomorrow you're not. Tomorrow you're back in the informal sector. So this movement back, as you can see, formal which self-employed is blue, is that quite a few of them, the next time we follow them in the 7-year space we have using the Indian Human Development Survey, the IHDS, you can see a lot of these workers are moving back into informality. Upper informal, self-employed, also in India, and this is very specific to India itself, a lot of them also move back into informality or into wage employment. Very few of them move into the blue, which is formal self-employment. Lower tier informal self-employment, we see workers staying in the status, at least in the 7-year cycle we have data for. And we see very little movement up and some movement down. Formal wage employment is a category, and that's in yellow, where if you're there pretty much for life. Very few of these workers who are in formal wage employment are going to move down into informal wage employment or move across to formal self-employment. And then we have the upper informal wage employment and low informal wage employment. And the one thing that you can see, it stands out, and it's actually quite perhaps one of the highest rates we see among the countries we studied, is the fact that the proportion of workers in lower tier wage employment who stay on in the same status 7 years in this case is extremely high, around 75%. So if you're in lower tier wage employment, informal wage employment in India, it's very likely that's what you're going to be doing pretty much for life. And that's something that is very specific, again, in the Indian context, that we see hardly any movement over time where workers are switching from, not even from lower to upper tier work, but even from wage employment to self-employment. That's, again, quite surprising, that we're not seeing any movement across wage employment, self-employment. Next slide. So who moves up or down? And this is what looking at the country case study we have. The formerly employed are least likely to move down. Once you're there, you're there. Upper tier informal employed are most likely to move up, not so much in India, we already saw that, especially in Latin America and South Africa. There we see mobility upwards. the good kind of mobility that we want. Lower tier informal or wage employed or self-employed are least likely to move up. And of course, within the lower tier informal work, we tend to see differences across countries. So some countries, lower tier informal self-employment is the largest category, and you stay there. You don't move up or anywhere else. In India, lower tier informal wage employment is the largest category, and you tend to stay there. So this kind of work are dead-end jobs because essentially there's no future for you in terms of moving up the job ladder. And there's something we need to think about when we think about policies for informal workers across different segments of the informal labor market. So let me talk about policies. What we must try to understand is, and I do think that sometimes the debates on this that we tend to see in the global space is not very useful. Because it's not very useful because we not start thinking about a world where one size does not fit all. We have to start thinking of a world where there are different segments of the job ladder. Countries have some segments as larger or more persistent, and we have to think about what policies might do in that country for that segment of the job ladder. It needs to be as specific and as targeted as that. And so if that's the case, we can think about countries which differ for very different reasons on the size of the segments, self-employment, wage employment, upper tier, lower tier, informal, possibly the transition. We need to take all these things into account. And if we take all this into account, moving on to, if we account, right away we see striking differences across continents. For example, in Latin America and South Africa, we do see mobility up. And for those countries, maybe the priority of the policy making would be to increase formal jobs so there can be more movement into the formal jobs and also to provide protection to upper tier workers in these countries. But in India and Sub-Saharan Africa, except South Africa, what we're seeing is, if anything, high levels and rates of persistence in lower tier informal work, self-employment in Africa, wage employment in India. And this, so in that case, this is a segment that should be prioritized, or rather these two segments. So clearly, across continents, we see differences. Within continents, we see differences. And therefore, policies need to be absolutely tuned, aligned to these sorts of issues, rather than think about policies that might not work in a particular country context. So to conclude on this issue about how we should think going forward, what we've got to understand moving forward, what we need to understand is that the world that we see now is a world in formal work is a reality. And formal jobs are not going to be coming in for quite some time. If anything, it's going to be much more difficult. And I think Professor Nair mentioned this earlier, globalization and labor-saving technological change, formal jobs will be a scarcity, especially in Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. In these two parts of the world, we're going to see a major challenge in providing formal productive jobs, high-paying jobs. So then the conventional debate has been moving workers from informal jobs to formal jobs. But what sense does it make? Of course, it's something we want to see, but it's not going to be reality in these regions. And therefore, the important thing here is to find ways to help those right at the bottom of the job ladder, the bottom tier, who are in dead-end jobs, and try to do things about policies which we need to think about, especially targeting them. And of course, we want to have this wonderful lecture from Professor Marty Chen yesterday on how we can think about these issues in the VVKD Memorial Lecture. So how do we transform the lives and livelihoods of those in lower-end dead-end jobs? That should be the priority. Not so much worrying about those in the upper tier trying to move the formal jobs. Of course, that's important, but should not be the policy priority. So let me end here. Thank you so much.
Publishing houses. He has recently joined as the member secretary of Indian Council of Social Science Research, and most importantly, he is a professor at JNU. But most importantly, he studied from this very university, the Rajiv Gandhi University. The person responsible for providing support to social science research in the country. It is indeed a pleasure to have him here and join us in the valedictory session. I invite him, the chairperson of the valedictory session, to address the gathering.
So much, Honorable Shri Chowna, Honorable Deputy Chief Minister, Government of Arunachal Pradesh, Professor Nair, the President of Indian Society of Labor Economics, distinguished academic, former Vice Chancellor of Delhi University, Professor Kunal Sen, the keynote speaker, Dr. N.T. Bekam, the Honorable Registrar, Professor Avasti, Professor Upadhyay, Professor Mundi, some of my old teachers here, can I recognize from the erstwhile Arunachal University, Rajiv Gandhi University, some of teachers from JNU, my friends, colleagues. It indeed is an honor for me, a special honor for me, and I really thank the International Society of Labor Economics for making this possible for me. I'm here after 26 years, and such a proud moment. This is a new building, but I have been here many a time, this place, and it's an emotional homecoming for me. Well, I'm here because of ICSSR. I'm not here because who I am. I totally understand that. And of course, I have only a layman idea of the very important, significant issues that have been deliberated and so wonderfully been put by the keynote speaker here. All I can say is this, that, and ever since I've joined ICSR, since I was coming here, of course, I've seen some of the literature that has been produced in area of labor economics. And what I can say, of course, is this, that ICSSR would continue to support all such seminars, conferences, and initiatives to come to both. Well, I was, as somebody who comes from humanities, from literature and culture studies, all the issues that have been talked about, and hearing Professor Sen, what I can infer is this, that, and as Professor Nair was talking about, the similarity between 1930s, the depression, perhaps, and some of the assumptions on the effects, obviously, of the crisis in the labor market post-COVID, and the geopolitical situation in the world today. I was thinking of 19th century, and as student of literature, through Dickens, obviously, that world where, industrial revolution and the crisis, obviously, of labor. And as again, somebody who reads literature, the crisis of labor, obviously, the crisis of wage as such, is connected with various other, of course, issues that concerns the individual. In literature, we read the individual and impact upon an individual, emotive, psychological, social, political, historical, that all, perhaps the objective forces of the market and economy has on an individual. And from that perspective, I think it's a really important deliberations that we all have. It touches, of course, intersectional issues, for instance, of gender, of environment. The great conflict which we have today is again a conflict that has remained. Is this, that how do you bring in infrastructure developments, for instance, with the questions of ecology, and how do you therefore somehow resolve the need for competitive wages with the great transnational and global forces of capital. I'm sure these are some of the things that have been obviously discussed. And to reiterate, to reiterate the support of ICSSR. I was also wondering where Professor Sen, of course, ended about the low-tier informal workers being the most vulnerable one. The government has a policy of skilling and skill development. I mean, it's for the economists and labor economists, obviously, to think about whether skilling in any way is going to be helpful in promoting the self-development in economic terms of these workers and the rise up the ladder. Nevertheless, I mean, to reiterate, thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's a wonderful moment for me. I could go on, but thank you. Thanks indeed. Thanks.
A veteran and an eminent politician from Arunachal Pradesh has been serving the state as Deputy Chief Minister since July 2016. He holds the portfolio of finance and investment, power and non-conventional energy resources, tax and excise, state lotteries, and economics and statistics. Sir, it is indeed an honor and privilege to invite you, the chief guest of the valedictory session of the 63rd Annual Conference, to please deliver his address.
Professor Deepak Nair, President, Indian Society of Labor Economics, Professor Dhananjay Singh, Member Secretary, Indian Council of Social Science Research, Professor Kunal Sen, Director, United Nations University, WIDER, Helsinki, Professor Jimol Unni, President 63rd Indian Society of Labour Economics Conference, Professor Alakh N. Sharma, Director, Institute of Human Development and Editor, Indian Journal of Labour Economics, Professor I.C. Avasthi, Honorary Secretary, Indian Society of Labour Economics, Professor Vandana Upadhyay, Conference Organizing Secretary, Professor RGU, Dr. N.T. Rikam, Registrar, Rajiv Gandhi University, DC Papumpare Shri Sachin Rana, all the esteemed delegates from renowned institute from across the country and abroad, ladies and gentlemen present, my dear students, friends, media friends. Well, साकेत कुशवाहा जी ने मुझे कई दफ़ा यहाँ बुलाया था, लेकिन कुछ कारण वक्त में आ नहीं पाया। अभी भी हमारा बजट सेशन आने वाला है, तो मैं व्यस्त था। फिर भी मैंने जब साकेत कुशवाहा जी ने मुझे बुलाया तो मैंने ना नहीं कहा कि आ जाऊं। लेकिन इस दफ़ा का जो आपका जो व्यवस्था है, कॉन्फ्रेंस है, ये मेरे लायक का नहीं है, क्योंकि यहाँ बहुत इंटेलेक्चुअल है, इकोनॉमिस्ट है, एकेडमिशियंस है, स्कॉलर्स है, रिसर्च स्कॉलर्स है, उनका साथ मैं क्या बोलूँ। तो इसीलिए आने का पहले मैंने मेरा पीआरओ को बोला, देखो भाई मेरा स्पीच अच्छा से बनाओ, हाँ मैं क्या बोलूँ उनका साथ, क्या शेयर करूँ मैं, कुछ रिलेवेंट है, उनका जितना भी थीम है क्या है उनका अच्छा से देखो सोच के बनाओ। तो इस तरह का सोचते सोचते मैं आ पहुंचा, तो यहाँ खड़ा हुआ तो मैंने सोचा कि मेरा दिल का बात भी कुछ कह दूं आपको, क्योंकि आप बहुत दूर से आए हैं। अब अरुणाचली तो है ही है, यहाँ बाहर से भी बहुत स्कॉलर्स जो आए हैं, स्टूडेंट्स आए हैं, स्कॉलर्स आया है, पीएचडी करने वाला है, पीएचडी करा हुआ भी आए हैं। तो इसलिए मैंने सोचा कुछ अरुणाचल का बारे में कहूँ आप। तो अरुणाचल नॉर्थ ईस्ट फ्रंटियर ट्रैक कहा जाता था एक जमाना, और एक्सटर्नल अफेयर्स मिनिस्ट्री द्वारा शासित था। सदिया फ्रंटियर ट्रैक, तिराप फ्रंटियर ट्रैक, बालीपारा ट्रैक, फ्रंटियर ट्रैक, इस तरह के नाम से जाना हुआ करता था। तो बाद में नेफा हुआ नॉर्थ ईस्ट फ्रंटियर हो गया, होम मिनिस्ट्री का द्वारा शासित। उसका बाद 1972 में यूनियन टेरिटरी बना। 1972 में यूनियन टेरिटरी, उस जमाना के हमारा जितना भी एजेंसी काउंसिल मेंबर थे, सभी लास्ट एजेंसी, आउटगोइंग एजेंसी काउंसिल मेंबर, सभी ने बैठ के ये निर्णय के राजा हमारा लेफ्टिनेंट गवर्नर हुआ करता था, तो उन्होंने सबका साथ मिलके ये निर्णय हुआ कि अभी यूनियन टेरिटरी का नाम क्या दिया जाएगा। तो अरुणाचल, तो यूनियन टेरिटरी का नाम कोई बहुत सा नाम आया, उसमें से अरुणाचल, अरुणाचल, द फर्स्ट सनराइज इन द 21st सेंचुरी, इसलिए अरुणाचल नाम दिया। तो अरुणाचल से पहचान हुआ यूनियन टेरिटरी 1972। अभी 2022 जनवरी 20 तारीख को 50 साल पूरा हुआ। 50 साल पहले जब अरुणाचल का उद्घाटन हुआ, इनॉग्रेशन हुआ यूनियन टेरिटरी, स्वर्गीय इंदिरा गांधी जी हमारा प्राइम मिनिस्टर हुआ करती थी, तो मैं जीरो में, मैं एज ए स्टूडेंट आई वेंट टू जीरो टू पार्टिसिपेट टू सी द फंक्शन। And after 50 years, same in Zero, we have celebrated 50 years of Arunachal Pradesh. And at that time, 1972, I never thought that I will be the person to deliver the keynote address during after 50 years. So it was very nostalgic for me. It was a very proud moment for me personally. तो देखिए एक ज़माना में अरुणाचल में ना स्कूल थे, ना कॉलेजेस थे, ना यूनिवर्सिटीज़ थे, ना सड़क थे, यातायात का सुविधा, बहुत परेशानी। तो आज का दिन में अभी 50 साल का बाद, 60 साल का बाद आप देखिए अरुणाचल में कितना बदलाव आ गया है। आप इसी यूनिवर्सिटी में आके देखेगा कि कितना हमारा ही बच्चा लोग है, अपना ही लड़का, डॉक्टर रिकम को देखिए वहाँ बैठे हुए हैं, वो हमारा लीडरशिप ले रहे हैं एकेडमिक्स में। इसी तरह इतना टैलेंट आ गया है, डॉक्टर्स हमारा है, इंजीनियर्स हमारा अपना है। एक जमाना टीचर्स हम यूपी बिहार से टीचर्स लाते थे, आओ भाई पढ़ाओ, नौकरी ले लो यहाँ आके, तो यहाँ आके साइन करना बोलता है कि नौकरी ले लो तुमको। लेकिन आज के दिन में 80% हमारा हो गया, भाई तुम्हारा लिए सिर्फ 20% है, तुम्हारा लिए 20% है, आज तो हमारा 80% तो हमारा अपना बन गया है। तो इस तरह का माहौल है और इतना टैलेंट है। आप देखो पद्मश्री, 3 पद्मश्री है हमारा, लिटरेचर में है हमारा, है स्पोर्ट्स में है हमारा, अब सॉन्ग्स एंड ड्रामा है, इंडिया गॉट टैलेंट्स में गया है, इंडियन आइडल में चला गया है, ये लोग इतना टैलेंट है, स्पोर्ट्स में टैलेंट है, कॉमनवेल्थ में खेलता है, आपका नेशनल गेम्स में ले रहा है, नेशनल गेम्स से इस दफ़ा तो नॉर्थ ईस्ट गेम्स में 3rd पोजीशन आया। तो इस तरह का अरुणाचल का जो लेगेसी है धीरे धीरे बहुत आगे बढ़ के आया। 2004-05 में मैं एजुकेशन मिनिस्टर था, तो ये जो यूनिवर्सिटी था ये सेंट्रल यूनिवर्सिटी का दर्जा नहीं मिलता था। तो मैं मिनिस्टर था, डॉक्टर जोरान बेगी हायर एजुकेशन का डायरेक्टर था। हम दोनों ने दिल्ली में जाके सेंट्रल मिनिस्ट्री ह्यूमन रिसोर्स को खटखटाते अल्टीमेटली ये जो राजीव गांधी यूनिवर्सिटी सेंट्रल यूनिवर्सिटी हो गया उस वक्त से। तो उस वक्त से कितना हमारा यहाँ से जो लड़का निकाला है। शर्मा साहब यहाँ बैठे हुए हैं, माय ओल्ड फ्रेंड टुडे, उनको देख के मुझे बहुत पुराना यादें आ गया है। उनको देखा, हमारा वाइस चांसलर हुआ करते थे, उनका विदाई जो है फेयरवेल, मेरा घर में ही छोटा सा रूम में मैं फेयरवेल दिया रहा उनको, मुझे अभी भी याद है। शर्मा साहब ये सब यहाँ में है, वेरी रिनाउंड इकोनॉमिस्ट फ्रॉम नॉर्थ ईस्ट ऑल्सो। तो यहाँ में इतना इकोनॉमिस्ट है, इतना लर्नड पीपल है, मैं क्या बोलूँ, मैं आपसे क्या चर्चा करूँ। तो आज अरुणाचल प्रदेश में विकास आया है, विकास पिछले 7-8 साल से बहुत विकास है। एक तो रोड कम्युनिकेशन ना, आज मैसिव डेवलपमेंट हो रहा है, रोड कम्युनिकेशन, ट्रांस अरुणाचल हाईवे फ्रॉम वन एंड टू द अनदर एंड, विदाउट क्रॉसिंग। एक जमाना था विदाउट क्रॉसिंग थ्रू आसाम हम कहीं नहीं पहुंच पाते थे। आज हम आसाम नहीं होके भी अंदर हम बहुत जगह जा सकते हैं। इतना रोड कम्युनिकेशन सुंदर हुआ, रेलवे कम्युनिकेशन आ गया है, एयरवेज आ गया, अपना जो है एयरपोर्ट बन गया है, अभी डायरेक्ट फ्लाइट है दिल्ली से यहाँ। तो इस तरह का जो है डेवलपमेंट धीरे धीरे अरुणाचल में आ गया है, पोटेंशियल बहुत है। दीपक नायर जी ने मुझे पूछा रहा कि अरुणाचल में क्या चैलेंजेस क्या है, तो चैलेंजेस तो वैसे तो बहुत है हमारा, चैलेंजेस एक चैलेंजेस नहीं है, बहुत चैलेंजेस है, किंतु इस चैलेंजेस को हम पोटेंशियल में बदलाना होगा। हमारा तो पहाड़ी इलाका में हमारा बहुत चैलेंजेस है, उनको स्कूल देना है, उनको सड़क देना है, उनको एग्रीकल्चर देना है, उनको कॉलेज देना, हॉस्पिटल, हेल्थ केयर फैसिलिटीज देना है, इस तरह का डीमाइग्रेशन करना है। सब लोग यहाँ देखता है तो ईटानगर में लाइट है, बिजली है, पानी है, कॉलेज है, एजुकेशन है, हेल्थ है, सब यहाँ नीचे उतर के आता है, तो वापस भेजना होगा। सरकार का यही है कि उनको वापस कैसे भेजे। वापस भेजने के लिए तो सड़क, अच्छा सड़क होना है उनको वापस जाने के लिए, फिर वहाँ रहने के लिए इंतजाम करना होगा, स्कूल देना होगा, सबका एग्रीकल्चर फैसिलिटीज देना होगा। अभी धीरे धीरे डी माइग्रेशन हम लोग देखा है, रिवर्स माइग्रेशन देखने को मिला है। बहुत से लोग यहाँ वापस चला गया है, खेती बाड़ी करते हैं और वहाँ का जो उगाव है, प्रोडक्शन है, यहाँ ईटानगर बेचते हैं, आउटसाइड में बेचते हैं। क्योंकि कम्युनिकेशन अच्छा हो गया। तो इस तरह का धीरे 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 एक सुंदर सा एक माहौल आ रहा है। हाइड्रो पावर पोटेंशियल, आप देखिए हाइड्रो पावर, हाईएस्ट हाइड्रो पावर पोटेंशियल हमारा पास है। अभी अभी भारत सरकार ने 2880 मेगावाट सैंक्शन कर दिया। द बिगेस्ट हाइड्रो पावर जो है अभी सैंक्शन हुआ है, और 3 हम अभी शीघ्र ही हम 3 हाइड्रो पावर को हम MOU साइन करने वाला है। इस तरह का हमारा जो हाइड्रो पावर और मिनरल्स एंड माइनिंग्स में इस तरह का हमारा पोटेंशियल है। और एग्रीकल्चर हॉर्टिकल्चर में बहुत ही ज़्यादा है। इट कैन बी फ्रूट बाउल ऑफ इंडिया। अरुणाचल कैन बी फ्रूट, इतना लैंड बैंक है, इतना लैंड रिसोर्स है हमारा। मैं तो कहूँगा कि कोई बाहर से लोग आए, कॉन्ट्रैक्ट फार्मिंग करे, यहाँ में विन विन सिचुएशन होगा। आपका भी विन विन सिचुएशन होगा, मेरा भी विन विन। आप ये वैल्यू एडिशन करके उसको बिक्री करिए, लेकिन हमारा जो आबादी है उनको आप उगाने दीजिए, उसको फिर बाय बैक करिए उसको। इस तरह का हमारा जो है एग्रीकल्चर हॉर्टिकल्चर पे बहुत ही ज़्यादा टूरिज्म पोटेंशियल बहुत ज़्यादा है। टूरिज्म पोटेंशियल अभी टूरिज्म में क्या है, इतना सुंदर हमारा द मोस्ट ब्यूटीफुल प्लेस ऑन अर्थ इन इंडिया अरुणाचल प्रदेश। बट कौन आएगा? अगर रहने का जगह होना होगा, होम स्टे, अच्छा होम स्टे होना होगा, अच्छा होटल होना होगा, अच्छा गेस्ट हाउस होना होगा। तो इस तरह का चैलेंजेस है हमारा। तो टूरिज्म कैन बी ए बिग इंडस्ट्री फॉर अरुणाचल प्रदेश। इस तरह का हमारा जो अरुणाचल अभी धीरे 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 हमारा हिस्ट्री, जो हमारा इतिहास, कितना गौरवशाली इतिहास है, कितना गौरवपूर्ण इतिहास है, मुझे ही मालूम नहीं था। मुझे आज़ादी का अमृत महोत्सव ने हमें ये मौका दिया है कि हमारा हिस्ट्री, जो फॉरगॉटन हिस्ट्री, टू रीराइट आवर ओन फॉरगॉटन हिस्ट्री। वी हैव सच ए रिच हिस्ट्री वी नेवर न्यू। आज़ादी का अमृत महोत्सव, 75 इयर्स ऑफ इंडियन इंडिपेंडेंस। प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी कहता है कि अपना जो फॉरगॉटन हिस्ट्री है, अपना जो इतिहास है, उसको इकट्ठा करके लोगों पे दो आप। तो हमने इस चैलेंजेस को मान लिया। हमने अरुणाचल राजीव गांधी यूनिवर्सिटी के हिस्ट्री डिपार्टमेंट को बोला कि आप लोग ये टास्क लो, आप लोग हमारा जितना भी अनसंग हीरो है उसका ऊपर रिसर्च करो। तो हमारा हिस्ट्री डिपार्टमेंट ने रिसर्च करके हमारा अनसंग हीरोज का ऊपर अच्छा से रिसर्च किया, डॉक्यूमेंटेशन किया उन्होंने। फिर आर्काइवल में मटेरियल कलेक्ट किया है। असम आर्काइव इज वन ऑफ द रिचेस्ट आर्काइव्स, वहाँ से बहुत आर्काइवल मटेरियल लिया है। फिर कोलकाता से लिया, फिर दिल्ली से इकट्ठा किया, नेशनल म्यूजियम से किया। फिर जो मिशनरीज जो आए थे, मिशनरी जोरहाट मिशनरी, गुवाहाटी मिशनरी, क्रिश्चियन मिशनरी से जो डॉक्यूमेंट कलेक्ट किया, आर्काइवल मटेरियल कलेक्ट किया, कलेक्ट करके उनका ऊपर लिखने का शुरू किया। अभी हमारा डॉक्यूमेंट बना लिया है। 220 हमारा अनसंग हीरो है, जो 2000 प्रूव टू बी दे वर अनसंग हीरो। टुडे दे आर नो मोर अनसंग, दे आर सिंगिंग हीरोज। We have made them our singing heroes. Today we will write our own history in our own perspective. We have been reading the modern history, the Mughal history. We never do our own history. Today we will give the facility to read our own history. We will give the history book in the school curriculum, in the college curriculum. हम उनका वो अनसंग हीरोज के बारे में लिखेंगे और अपना हिस्ट्री के बारे में। हमें पता नहीं था कि 18 साल 1857 सिपाही म्यूटिनी का 18 साल पहले we fought with the colonial era, with the Britishers. We fought and we defeated them. We never know. The Anglo-Boer War, the four times they have defeated the Anglo-War, defeated the Britishers. We never knew. The 1-2 warriors. They have defeated the Lieutenant Holcomb and with 80 sepoy. We never knew. All these histories are rewritten now. Such a rich history, the unsung hero we had. So this kind of activities are taking place in Arunachal Pradesh nowadays. तो इस तरह का हमारा जो है, तो ये जो लेगेसी है, हमारा जो पुराना जो बाप दादा से हमारा संस्कृति का जो लेगेसी है, ये लेगेसी अभी है, ये लेगेसी को कंटिन्यू करना चाहिए। और रिसर्च एक विंग खोलेंगे हम, हम सरकार ने ये तय किया कि यहाँ राजीव गांधी यूनिवर्सिटी में हम रिसर्च विंग खोल लेंगे कि हमारा सिर्फ एक सेक्टर में ये अनसंग हीरोज का ऊपर नहीं और बाकी बहुत सेक्टर है, सभी सेक्टर में हम रिसर्च हो सके, तो इस तरह का हम एक रिसर्च विंग भी खोलेगा। इस तरह का हमारा जो है सरकार का प्रयास है। नाउ कमिंग इनटू दिस टुडेज the topics I would like to share with you in the written form. Such annual conference are a unique occasion to meet friends, important position holders and functionaries of the ISLE and to share knowledge and experience that have a lot to do in helping our country achieve the target of Atmanirbhar Bharat with vision, dedication and collaboration at all levels. I believe that labor economics, professionals interested in labor and employment relations, policymakers and trade union leaders among others might have thrown adequate light during the deliberation in the last 3 days of this conference in the themes like the challenge of youth employment, the changing rural labor market and rural diversification, and long-term impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the economy and labor market. Core concern of ISLE conference being the challenges of the youth employment is a global phenomenon. For the last several decades, Government of Arunachal Pradesh, being equally concerned, has taken up several measures to address the unemployment issues and to create livelihood opportunities for the youth under the Arunachal Pradesh Entrepreneurship Development Program. Under this program, we have started an Arunachal Pradesh Innovation and Investment Park to support, handhold and facilitate startup of the young entrepreneurs in our state to start their own business and to achieve success in the process. Under the Arunachal Pradesh Innovation and Investment Park, we will continue to nurture the aspiring startup ventures in the state through the implementation of APD-EDP, as our government is committed to promoting innovation initiatives. We are hopeful that the Arunachal Pradesh Entrepreneurship Development Program will bring economic development in the state with the active engagement of the youth in building the startup ecosystem, generating increased job opportunities in the region, while empowering the youth to stand on their own feet. The state government also has initiatives like Deen Dayal Upadhyaya Swalaman Yojana, where 40% front-ended capital investment subsidy is given to the beneficiaries to start up small and medium enterprises who are all unemployed. We have also established dedicated investment division under the Department of Planning and Investment to bring synergy in connecting industries for potential investment in the state. In tourism sector, also we are implementing Chief Minister's Paryatan Vikas Yojana, under which subsidies are being provided to the unemployed youth to run homestays, etc. Another initiative very close to the heart of our government is setting up agro-processing unit through the formation of FPOs, the Farmers Producers Organization and Farmers Producers Company, and also extending support to the women self-help groups. The whole idea is to make our people, especially the youth, job givers in place of job seekers. Today, I feel extremely proud to inform you all that Arunachal Pradesh emerged as one of the top performers in the investment pillars in the Northeastern and Hilly States category in Niti Aayog's India Innovation Index 2021. Another important theme addressed as understood from the ISLE concern is changing rural labor market and rural diversification. On this score, my own distinct take is that the thrust today of the Union government is on rural transformation in line of the great Gandhian principle with emphasis on villages as the true soul of India. Delving deep into these challenges is the task of university research scholars. As far as Arunachal Pradesh is concerned, we must pragmatically look into the issues of unorganized labor, hill agriculture and migrant labor to find out ways and measures to address the same. My request to the conference organizers and Rajiv Gandhi University would be to keep this particular aspect in mind while encouraging the youth of the state to be acquainted with the basic responsibilities that they have to shoulder as citizens on whom the state reposes a lot of faith that they would take it to ever greater heights through mass rural facelift. COVID-19 pandemic has made the global community realize that its long-term impact on economy and labor market is to be very properly understood and in its total ramification. India's saga of success on the front of COVID management has earned worldwide appreciation. While many developed economies have buckled under onslaught of pandemic, the Indian example has been an eye-opener for the global think tank across the ideological spectrum. Recently acknowledged by the researchers community spearheaded by the Stanford University are enlightening enough regarding how New India has been able to carve a space for itself in guiding the global concern of economic management, also involving the concerns of the labor market. To sum up, I would like to reiterate that the Government of India and our state government here in Arunachal Pradesh is highly sensitive to the issues of youth employment, rural markets and diversification and the long-term impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the economy vis-a-vis labor market. In being so, we have rolled out many initiatives and have also achieved success. Nevertheless, we all know that these are ongoing processes. I'm confident that in the future, with the intervention, inputs and valuable suggestions from the ISLE, we all will be able to achieve much better and higher results in these fields. I'm sure as an outcome of this conference, ISLE would come up with many more innovative ideas to address these issues. Finally, my sincere thanks to the organizers for having invited me to take part in this conference, the valuable outcome of which may kindly be shared to guide us formulate an even more effective economic policy in the state. Jai Hind, Jai Arunachal. Thank you very much.
Deputy Chief Minister, sir. I now invite Professor Vandana Upadhyay, the organizing secretary of this conference, to give her closing remarks and propose the vote of thanks.
RGU administrators, teachers, and all my dear friends. As we come to the close of the 3-day, extremely fruitful and engaging 63rd ISLE conference held in RGU campus, there is so much to reflect upon and also feel satisfied about. It took us about a year to plan this mega event, braving all the challenges that organizing an event of this scale entails, given the unique location of our state and the administrative issues involved. We braved it all thanks to the massive assistance coming from every side, from the political leadership in the state, the Honorable CM and the DCM's and Education Minister's office, the government officials in the state, to mention a few, DC Papumpare, Shri Sachin Rana, SP, Papumpare, and Labour Secretary Shri Ajay Bisht, the RGU administration, led by Honorable VC Professor Saket Khushwaha, Honorable Registrar Dr. N.T. Rikam, my wonderful colleagues Professor S.K. Nayak, Dr. Lama, Dr. Guru, Dr. Moir Riba, Dr. Anup, Dr. Prasanjit, Dr. K.P. Singh, Dr. Vikim Chandra, Dr. Nochi, Dr. Sunil Koijam, Dr. Ashok Barman, and many more, drawn from different departments as well as my own department. I gratefully acknowledge the role of Professor Deepak Nair, the President of the Indian Society of Labour Economics and former Vice Chancellor of Delhi University, for leading us from the front and seeing us through all the ups and downs of this journey. My deepest gratitude to the conference president, Professor Jimoloni, for always being there for us. Your encouragement and support means a lot to all of us. Thank you so much, ma'am. We are deeply indebted to all the speakers of the various memorial lectures and the keynote speakers. Due to paucity of time, I would not be reading the names. A special thanks to Professor Kunal Sen, Director, United Nations University, Helsinki, Finland, for his valedictory lecture, and to Professor Dhananjay Singh, Member Secretary, ICSR, for his address. I will be failing in my duty if I do not acknowledge the gracious presence of some of our esteemed participants from abroad. Mr. Satoshi Sakai, Director, ILO, Country Office, India, Sher Verick, Nicholas Metri, Gary Rogers, Imrana Valodia, David Campbell, Jens Lurch, Salim Rehana, Genar Rogers, Ginny Rogers, Barbara Harris-White, Martha Chen, Prabha Koteshwaran, Igor Boss. Thank you so much for being here. But for your presence, the conference would not have been a big success as it is. Thank you so much for undertaking the long and difficult journey to be with us in Itanagar. Not to speak of the never say die attitude of the director of the Institute for Human Development and the editor of the Indian Journal of Labour Economics, Professor Alak Narayan Sharma. His commitment to the conference and his unique capacity to inspire his team has been exemplary. Clearly, he is an institution in himself, and I take this opportunity to express my deepest appreciation for his Himalayan efforts to bring us all from different parts of the globe under this one roof in Rajiv Gandhi University campus. He deserves a big round of applause. My friends, Priyanka and Jyoti from IHT have been the rock-solid pillars, being behind the scene, round the clock, never-ending involvement, took care of the logistical and academic aspects of the event. Clearly, this was the finest manifestation of what women power is all about. The team included A.N. Sharma, G.C. Manna, Professor Acharya, I.C. Avasthi, Balwant Mehta, Bhim Reddy, Ashwini Kumar, Vikash Dubey, Amarjeet Singh, Arjun Dubey, Siddharth Dhote, Aditi Madan, Saurabh Gupta, Anisha Yadav. For me, it was a big honor to be a part of this team. A big thank you to all the stalwarts of ISLE conferences who have been providing academic leadership and direction to this annual event for several decades now. Thanks to their dedication, this conference has provided the best possible learning opportunities to young scholars from across the world. And all the grandeur and the near perfection in terms of aesthetics, the vibrant colors and uplifting energy around us has to be credited to my friend and colleague, Dr. Moir Riba and Priyanka Tyagi. Her unmatched talent makes us all so proud of her. Thank you so much, Moir. On a personal note, I experience an immense sense of satisfaction at the fact that the mega event concluded on a very productive note. The technical sessions were great. In total, around 300 presentations were made, centering around 3 broad themes of the conference. The deliberations were very high standard. In fact, it was really encouraging to receive so many full papers. The conference provided us with this wonderful opportunity to reconnect with colleagues and friends, both academically and personally, and this truly is such a big blessing in today's uncertain circumstances. A special thank to Professor Atul Sharma, the former Vice Chancellor, for being here with us. Thank you, sir. And closer home, my gratitude to Chief Minister, the Deputy CM, and the Education Minister for accepting our request to be the chief guest in the inaugural and valedictory function. Such conferences cannot be held individually. I must mention here that I received full support from the administration of Rajiv Gandhi, starting from my Vice Chancellor, Professor Saket Kushwaha, to my Registrar, Dr. N.T. Rikam. They have been a big support for us for this conference. I thank my department colleagues, Shri, Ms. Lomdak and Yakab, and Mr. Shiv Datta. Simply, I could not have imagined a situation without you all. The challenges were big, and together we have been able to overcome it. Our commitment to academic excellence and to pertinent issues of our times drives our resolve to work even harder and be part of the ongoing national and international discourses. This is what ISLE is, and this is what ISLE will always remain to be. I take this opportunity to thank everyone, all the learned participants, my colleagues, the RGU administration, the VSAT team, my student friends, the sanitation staff, the guest house staff, and most importantly, I would thank the God for keeping these 3 days dry. Thankfully, the rains did not play a spoil sport, which was our biggest fear. No words can describe what I feel for our wonderful volunteers. Our extremely talented boys and girls. You have seen them perform in the cultural show. You have also seen them serve all of us with great commitment and devotion. I can't name all of you, 140 of you, but all I can say, I'm so proud of them and I do not have appropriate words to thank them. I would request all the volunteers to please stand up. I would also like to particularly thank Pankaj and Meghraj, our caterers, for providing us tasty and healthy, wholesome meals, dot on time, without fail. But for them, our conference would not have been so smooth and hassle-free. Thank you. Thank you, ISLE, for having faith in Rajiv Gandhi University. Despite the minor hitches some of you may have experienced due to our scattered locations, but let me tell you, it is your gracious presence that has made this event so successful and historic in every sense. Together, we have brought Arunachal Pradesh to the mainstream of the academic world. Despite the challenges on the ground, the fact that so many of us could come together to share our thoughts and ideas and perspectives, this to my mind is really big and laudable. For many of our guests, this would be their first visit to Arunachal Pradesh. Everything about this place is amazing. from the mesmerizing beauty of the land of the rising sun to the warmth and large-heartedness of his people. Please do visit Arunachal Pradesh again. I extend an open invitation to all of you. A big and a heartfelt thanks to all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Vandana ji. And now, as is always customary, the final words of this conference, I always say, it takes a village to organize events like that, and I'm very proud, with great respect, I invite the headman of our village, the man we work for, the man who's responsible for bringing this program together, Professor Alakhan Sharma, for the final words of the 63rd Annual Conference.
Deputy Chief Minister, Professor Dhananjay Singh, Professor Kunal Sen, Professor Deepak Nayyar, Professor Jimoluni, Dr. N.T. Ekam, Professor Banna Upadhyay, Dr. Nayak, and friends. I already, Bandana has proposed elaborate vote of thanks, so I'm not going to take. Already we are so much delayed a lot of times. But just wanted to tell you that organizing this kind of conference in Itanagar, Arunachal Pradesh, a state with less than 20 lakh population, connectivity issue, infrastructure bottlenecks, and all, it was not so easy. Some 500 persons came, more than 500, not 5, about more than 500. It crossed last conference held in IIT Roorkee, or equal to that. Also, in spite of visa-related issue and all that, around 20 participants from outside India came. Shri Kizbeki sitting, my friend Imran Bolodia, so many people I'm not going to name, Vandana has already named it. So organizing this conference, by the way, ISLE doesn't have any money. It raises money every year for the conference, local organizing secretary raises, but so far 63 annual conferences have been organized. I have to name a few people, maybe it will be a repetition also. I am grateful to Deputy Chief Minister for gracing this occasion. Also Dr. Kunal Sen, who is also a editorial advisor of the Indian Journal of Labour Economics. He also came to our Dharwad conference maybe 15 years back, Kunal, something like that. But I am very happy that Dr. Dhananjay Singh could come. He has recently joined. ICSR has been promoting, supporting Indian Society of Labour Economics, in fact, journal also, for the last several decades, I would say. And he is from this place, he has studied here, so your presence means a lot. So I am thankful to all of you for being here. Friends, again, without taking any name, I am very conscious that we have overrun time. Grateful to all the keynote speakers, memorial lectures, people who delivered, all that, chairs, discussants, above reporters, all paper writers, all of them. Bandana has already thanked my team also, but I think I should again mention that there are two places from where this conference is organized. One at ISLE headquarters, which is located in IHD, and here is local organizing secretary. In ISLE, Dr. Awasthi, other people, but most important, our team. Priyanka, with the energy you have seen, Jyoti, which logistics have been managed, they deserve a big applause. Finally, I'm not naming many people, several senior people from the academic are here. Mr. Member Secretary, almost all ICSR research institutes scholars are here. And two chairmen of ICSR Institute, Professor Sudipta Mandal and Professor Deepak Nair is chairman of CSTS, Professor Sudipta Mandal is chairman of CDS, two directors of ICSR, GIDS and CS Hyderabad are here and many scholars. So this is ISLE is a training ground also for young scholars. So we always receive support from all ISLE members, executive committee members, former conference president who always come. So I am grateful to all the members and all executive members. Finally, again Vandana has thanked the Vice Chancellor and all that. But again, I salute Rajiv Gandhi University, led by Vice Chancellor Professor Saket Kushwaha and Dr. Rikam Registrar for leading the team. And entire organizing team, volunteers, cultural program, everything, but a separate applause is needed for Vandana Upadhyay, By the way, in course of the conference, myself, Priyanka and Jyoti came here twice. We met the Vice Chancellor, everybody, and I must have made, with Vandana and I must have talked, and Jyoti and Priyanka must have talked maybe 500 times over phone, WhatsApp, Zoom and all that. So the kind of efforts which are needed for organizing this conference, I'm telling. So also already volunteer, so I'm not talking about the cultural program. Everything was quite rich. Finally, all of you, members of the society, all the paper writers, chair, discussant, and all of you, by the way, something like 40% of the delegates have left because their flight was there, something like that. But now, so many people out of 500 are here. This shows the interest in the conference and, of course, enthusiasm. I hope you will be coming, and next time we will meet, we will tell you the date, topic is decided, we will send you circular, we will meet in the University of Hyderabad where Professor Ritu Diwan is the conference president. So thank you very much.
पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल गंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य